The Yerushalmi Megillah, Daf Chesed Beis, Halacha Zayin says in the Mishnah, Ein ben hamoder hanoah l'mechaber l'moder menu macho. So the difference between somebody who has forsworn his or benefit from his friend and somebody who's forsworn from him food, eladrisas haregel, other than walking through his courtyard, which is permitted, obviously, if you only forswore food, not permitted if you forswore all benefit. The kalim sheinosim b'mochel nefesh, and the use of vessels which are not normally used in order to produce food, because if you assert only food upon yourself, then it does include vessels which are normally used to make food, but it does include vessels which are not normally made to use food to make food. Ein ben adar l'nadavas. There's no difference between a carbon which you dedicated as a neder and a carbon which is dedicated as a nadava. A neder was when you say hare olai, it's incumbent upon me to make carbon. Nadava is when you say hare zu, this animal will be a carbon. Except chayovim el shenadori mesu nigdavu chem b'achrus of a neder, since it's on the gabra, not on the chefza, it's on the person. So therefore, if it gets lost or stolen, you have to replace it, as opposed to nadava, right? Nadavas mesu nigdavu ein chem b'achrus. But nadava, if it died or stolen, you don't have to replace it. So ask the Yerushalmi, why you ask a pot in which you make food? It says that a person, no matter what, even they only took a neder to forswear food, they're also not allowed to make use of a pot in which food is made. Why? Lomi machol nodar, did not take a neder specifically not to eat food of his friend. Why also the pot? So Rish Lakish said, Kini Masnisa, this is the way to understand the Mishnah. We're not talking about the difference between a person who forswore benefit from his friend and a person who's forswore of the food of his friend, but a person who forswore general benefit from his friend and a person who forswore food benefit connected with food of his friend. So therefore, the pots and pans are not machal, but they're hanoyas machal. They're not the food, but they are a benefit which is connected with food. V'tani Ridvei Rebbe came, and this is in the house of Bryson, in the house of Rebbe, from the house of Rebbe, taught us that as well. Somebody who forswore the benefit of food from his friend, he may not loan to him a sieve, kvara, it's another type of sifter, rechaim, grindstones, tanur, a oven, because they're all associated with food. Tani, we learned avamashu lo kosos ukoros, but you can loan to him kosos, cups, ka'aros, plates, with tamchuim and pots, which are not used in order to prepare the food, but only to store the food. That's a distinction, right? So the stuff which is used to prepare the food is also not stuff which is used in order to store the food. Shem hanim is ochel, avo mahach machlisas ochel. You can't, because you don't benefit the food by storing it. Now, I don't know, today if things are refrigerated, maybe that's different, because it does, well, maybe not. It won't necessarily make a difference. No, you only benefit food in preparing food. So therefore, benefit of food includes preparing food, but not storage food. Therefore, storage containers to be okay. Fussing the kedera asur. The pots and pans are forbidden. Litchon lidroch asur, to grind and to press grapes with him, since that also is hanos machal, benefit surrounding preparation of food, that's forbidden. Liktzor tzricha, but liktzor, to harvest, is a question, right? It's tzricha in the Yerushalmi is the equivalent of take on the Bavli. It means that we don't have a resolution for it. Liktzor tzricha, and to harvest grain and to harvest grapes. And the reason it says the Pnei Moshe way is the question is because it's a very far removed from the actual eating. So therefore, perhaps it's not included in the prohibition. Hanoyas machal mau. So the actually according to Shara, the Shara Teres Yisrael, the Girsa here is hanoyas hechsher machal mau. In other words, the big point of Pnei Moshe. This ben harvesting, whether it's the grain or the grapes, is hanoyas hechsher machal. It's not hanoah of the food itself, but hanoah of a preparatory to the food, and therefore that's the question. Okay, Tani. So let's try and bring let's proof. Avo mashila hu kardom. I said tzricha is the criminal teku, but not exactly. I take it back because tzricha can sometimes be answered. Sometimes the tzricha means it remains teku. Sometimes, as in this case, we try and resolve the tzricha. Okay, so the tani mashilu kardom. So it says that concerning this person who was mudar hanas machal from his friend, that the friend is allowed to loan him an axe, right? So So we thought it means perhaps the axe one uses in order to harvest. Evidently, that's a kardom can be understood to be an axe to chop wood or an axe to chop down a grain. So says Martipata ben kardom. I guess kardom perhaps is not an axe; it's some sort of field instrument. A garzen is an axe, so kardom is, I guess, some sort of sickle type instrument. So the so the Gemara says perhaps to say it's kardom should be cool. No, tipata b'kardom shel nikush. No, it could be sorry about the sickle wood we use is in order to cut bad grain. In other words, when you thin out your field. So then it's that's type of kardom it is, and therefore you're allowed to loan it even to somebody who's mudar b'hanoyas macha. So therefore it's not relevant in this case. Okay, Rabbi Avuna, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, boy, Avuna says Rabbi Yirmiyah asked, Hahain zusta, it's a kind of vessel made of hair, and if you push down on the hair, I guess it's like a bag, which is made to hold stuff, and you have goat hair or something like that, but if you push it down on it a bit, so the hair is split apart, and it can be used as a sieve. Okay, so this zusta, what do we say? Can it be loaned out in this case to somebody who's mudar nos machal or not? Became a shuhu because the Kirsten Gemara is marchik, the Shaita so changes to madchik, but that is the same. Since you can split apart the hairs in a way they can be used as a sieve, and use it to sieve flour, Kamishu not place it like a sieve, therefore you can loan out or not. The Gemara does not answer the question. Okay. Ezu neder shamru. What is a neder? Getting back to the end of our mission. When a person says it's come upon me on the Gavra. Vezun dava shamru. What's in dava? Zu olam. When they say the animal is designated to be the olam. Rabbi Chama Chavin Rabbanon. Rabbi Chama was a friend of the rabbis. Chama is called Chavin Rabbanon because he didn't have the real smicha. He was Babylonian Olech Hadash, so to speak, and he came to Eretz Yisrael and he never got the real smicha, so he's called Chavin Rabbanon. He was a friend of the rabbis, even though he wasn't a full-fledged musmach with the Eretz Yisrael smicha, which allowed them to be called Rabbi. Okay? So he asked, Chavin Rabbanon boy, Oma Harei Olai, the person said Harei Olai, coming upon me. And they said, Harei designates a specific animal. So what's the status? Is it a neder or a dover? Rabbi China boy, to stop to test someone else, China suggested, lo mistabra di lo, it says di da here, but Kormei changes it to di lo, Omar, lo mistabra di lo, Omar harei zev, chaz Omar harei olai. He says, no. Rabbi Chama's, couldn't be that was Rabbi Chama's question. Right? Why? He says, let's see, Kormei inside. Vachi Perusha. Rabbi Chama Porich lo mistabra, Rabbi Chanina Porich lo mistabra ach bayaklau. Doesn't make sense to Rabbi Chama's question. El Omar harei zebachol azar Omar harei olai. Because the vanim hanit isur chom, vanim hanit, that works. The isur chom or the chayabach ruso. That's harei zeh is a diminished responsibility. So therefore, once a person says harei olai, he can't accept himself by saying harei zeh. because it can't go down from the greater responsibility to low responsibility. But the person said Harei Zeh, and then he said Harei Alai concerning the same case, so then he upgraded responsibility, and that in fact would work. Harei Isur Chomer Chala Isur Kal, and Isur Kal Isur Chomer. Because the more severe Isser, so to speak, in other words, the more severe responsibility, devolves on top of the less severe responsibility, and not vice versa. Halacha Ches. Ein mitzvah b'rosh terios l'rosh sholosh. There's no difference between a Zav who's had 2 sightings of Ziva, of the mission, l'rosh sholosh, the one who's had 3 sightings of emission, el korban. They're both tummy for 7 days, and they have to have 7 clean days. But the Zav who saw 3 times as being a korban at the end of the time, the 7-day period, and the Zav only saw twice does not. A Mitzvah is in quarantine because we don't know if he's Tameh yet. Versus the Mitzvah is Muchla, who's definitely be declared Tameh. The only difference between them is Elapriya, Uprima, whether they have to rip their clothing and grow their hair long and rip their clothing. El B'tiglachas, where they have to shave at the end all of the hair off when they come Tahor. The Tziporim, where they have to bring the birds, which are the karbanos, the unique kind of karbanos of, so to speak, of a mitzvah. Okay? Says Gemara. Rabbi Barpasi, Rabbi Elazari. Our Mishnah is going like Rabbi Elezer. Rabbi Elezer, Apishlish is broken also, Mipnei HaKorban. So the third, we also check the Zav's third Re'iyah to see if it was a legitimate Re'iyah in order to see if he's Chayav Korban or not Chayav Korban. V'ram Krabanan Hashniya Me'ones Tahar, but according to Rabbanan it's difficult because by a person who saw 2 Re'iyos, if you saw one of them Ba'ones, he's not a Zav, neither for Korban nor for Tumah. And the third one, he is well, let's see the Korban on this. The first one is line Korban. According to Rabbi Lezer, Apir Shlish is Bokim, so near Korban. Even the third time we check goes Korban. You watch every Yosmach Maziva. We saw 2 emissions, which are certainly Ziva. Shlish is Ba'ones, and the third one happened as an accident. Ain't maybe Korban. He doesn't bring a Korban. Okay? So, Rabbanan Kasha. Because rabbis, it's difficult. Ekanami Ha. It can work with 2 really eels as well. Imra achas men ba'oines eino zav lo korban lo tumah. If you saw one of them bonus, so you're not a zav altogether, not for korban, not for tumah, only zav for that day, not subsequently. And the third time you are a zav, regardless of whether it was ones or not. Bein l'korban, bein l'tumah. So so therefore that differentiation it's not apparent in our Mishnah at all. Our Mishnah does differentiate between second and third. So it says that, let's see that inside. Why do we have the differentiation? Must that be our Mishnah is not going like Rabbi Lezer? Rabbi Yossi in Lacy Rabbi Rabbanan. You're right, it's not going Rabbanan. V'lo after Rabbi Lezer Lacy, but it also is not going like Rabbi Lezer on Mishnah. How so? The Tani Rabbi Lezer lo l'sosro amarti. I didn't say to undo the ziva. Ela shelo yavi korban, but rather you should make korban. Lo amarti she'eno zav listor. Shaitar so takes out the next 3 words. Lo amarti ela shelo yavi korban. Let's see the korban inside. Korban says. Sorry. Amar Rabbi Yosa. In them, in nomad loasim asisik rabbanon after you create Rabbi Lezer lomatziasya. Okay, it's not going to rabbanon, it's not going to Rabbi Lezer. So Lola's lomatzoser amarti. The kamla roe carries soser yomechad. Somebody who sees carry during his shiva nakim. So the seminal emission, he loses 1 day of 7-day count. But Zovi sees Ziva during his 7 days, he loses the whole Shiva Yomim. So it's the Shiva Yomim. Kamrei Rabbi Lezer said, the Vada Rio Shlishis Afilu Ba'ones, the third time he sees even Ba'ones, Soteresh Shiva, Kriya Zov. It contradicts that contradict. It undermines the 7 days. El dekach bodkin riyah shlishis. So the only reason why we check the third riyah is the imaya ba'ones pater mikorban. So it teaches us that the third time, if it was ones, he is exempt for a carbon. So there are other differences besides being 2 and 3. Ones, not ones, seems to be a factor, right? So it says going further, Hadama divrei koli. So you have to say, says the Mishnah, that this is divrei kol, and it's not getting into the details of when ones is relevant and when ones is not relevant to, right? Because in Tamar Rabbi Lezer because it was going to say Lezer, Nisnei Hashniya. Yeah, the Shai Teresah puts in the word lo. The second one does not. The second one does not undermine the 7 days because it's in 7 days yet, as opposed to the third time, which does undermine, right? This Hashniya lo b'stira v'lo b'korban. Ashish b'stira of a korban. The third one, it can either undermine the 7 days. The 7 days have to start over again, or it can generate a korban. So in any event, all these differentiations, which are obscure, to be honest, are not mentioned in Mishnah. So the Mishnah that's not getting into details, just a general overview statement of 2 verses 3. Okay, I'll die to Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer, Rosh Stein b'Shofi. You saw the Zab 2 times, which are emissions without any circumstance which are excusing. The circumstances excuse emission, I think there's 7. I don't remember the goal of them, but like too much eating, too much drinking, too much exertion. There's several of them which they're exempt. The Riyah considered and make it rendered be considered not a Riyah Zot. So the first 2 you saw B'Shofi, which means real Ziva. The Achas and the last one should be B'Koshi. This is you saw with difficult. Here it says Ba'oshi, and that would be going like on a male. But the Leiden manuscript has B'Koshi, and B'Koshi means when a woman who sees her third ziva when she is in the process of giving birth and labor pangs. So then that would, regardless whether by male ba'ones or by woman by the koshi of later, that would be considered to be an extenuating circumstance, right? So teres. So if they're counting 7 clean days with a male or female, it undermines the 7 clean days. Then it would be a korban. It sounds like here it's a woman, right? That's why the Ksavia Linus Girsa seems to make more sense. But she doesn't mean korban because Shabrin is a korban if she had 3 riyos. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda said, Masnisa, turn the page, Bishnei b'nei Adam. So he wants to say he doesn't get involved in the issues of oines and stira when it counsels, when it doesn't, and it goes like Rabbanan and Rabbi Lezer together. And our Mishnah is talking about 2 different people. One person saw it 2 times, another person saw it 3 times. It's not the same person saw it twice and then a 3rd time. And then we have all these difficulties about determining which is onus, which is not onus. No, 2 different people. One saw it twice and one saw it 3 times. And the difference between the 2 of them. Okay, or Rabbi Chanina, the Mishnah itself alludes to this. Why? Because it says, there's no difference between the Mitzvah, Muzgar, and the Mitzvah Muchlat, only these things. And obviously it's not the same person because then the Mitzvah Muzgar had become a Mitzvah Muchlat, right? Right? It's talking about 2 people. Because if it was talking about 1 person, so then let's say that there's no difference between the when he got a big baharis and when he got a little baharis. The little baharis is, of course, makes him muzgar. It doesn't grow. The big one makes him muchlar. So if we're talking about the same person, we should talk about the stages of the baharis, not mitzora muzgar, mitzora muchlar. That sounds like it's 2 different people. So just like over 2, it's 2 different. Over there, it's 2 different people. By mitzora, so too by the zav. B'shnei b'nei adam anu kayomim. We're talking about 2 different people. Okay, but going back to the case of tzoras, porcha bomi toch hezger. So the tzaras during the days in which he was quarantined spread throughout his body, and we have Pitzel kulo hafach lavan tahar hu. Isn't because wherever he comes completely tahar, white, top to bottom, head to toe, he's tahar. So, but Rabbi Yochanan had ton siparim. Rabbi Yochanan says he has to bring birds as well. Rabbi Elazar ain't ton siparim. Rabbi Elazar says he doesn't have to bring birds, right? So the question is, when he comes tahar in this manner of becoming kulo hafach lavan, does he have to bring birds or not bring birds? Interesting question, right? So obviously there's something to do with becoming completely white, which means, yes, you became a super mitzorah, and therefore you're exempt. But in past becoming a super mitzorah, you perhaps became chai to bringing carbon. Okay, so Masisa Messiah Rabbi Yochanan. There's a brayso which seems to be a proof for Rabbi Yochanan, because it says min hatzarua. It says hine nirpa nega tzaras min hatzarua. When it comes from Yaviv states, he put in the pasuk goes on and says they bring two birds. So mina tzarua, when you get tor as a result of the tzaras, right? The tzaras spreading lahavi yeshapara b'kula sheyatom tzipori. In order to, it indicates that the person whom the tzaras spread completely has to bring birds. Valotinu, so should be kavachomer. My misha toher vein simonim etaminimo. Somebody who is completely tar and has no simonim of tumah. In other words, the mitzorah muchlat, who then the mitzoras went away, told siporim, he has to bring birds. Misha tar simonim etam of imo. Somebody who comes to on a technicality. He still simonim tumah. Eino din she'eton siporim. Is it not kavachomer that's required to have birds? So valo she'amad bo shnei shvuos yochiach. Wait a second, says Gemara. Not necessarily. What about this other guy who becomes Torah? A person whose nega did not spread over the course of 2 weeks, right? It retained its status. So this one, Shatar, so one time of Vimos, it's in the grotto, he remains Tahar. But ain't no tonsi pouring. He doesn't have to bring birds. So Tamulomer min hatzarua lavia shaparcha b'kulo she'eton tziborim. So therefore, we have to have this pasuk that in order to undermine this this logic and tell us that a person who is, according to Rabbi Yochanan, a person who entirely spreads has to bring birds. The im oimerat. Now here. This is coming to evidently to defend Reish Rebbe Lezer, that just like we find somebody who becomes tohar out of quarantine because the nega remained status quo, he doesn't bring birds. So too, when it expands, so it should be the same, right? You should have to bring birds. So imay ma'at l'taher mitoch eskel leitan Tziporim, right? So it should be the same. Yasivne. So no, this I would respond to you if I was Rabbi Yochanan. Lo mutav lavshi pricha prichos, lo mira prichos. It's more likely that the pricha and expansion of the tzaras to this, even though he becomes a super mitzvah and becomes tor, but it should be like the expanded tzaras, which makes him tor muchlat, and therefore you should have to bring a korban as well, as Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Chananya from the Rabbanan. So Rabbi Chananya, the friend of the rabbi, said, same idea as we had Rabbi Chama before, Masis Rabbi Messiah Rabbi Yochanan. The brayso is evidence Rabbi Yochanan. The Chain Tana, the Chain Tana Masi B'Chavrei, because one Tana says to his friend, if you don't, not if you say with the person who does not require to be put muchlat, but we say saying this person who should be muchlat, Since he should be muchad, yaton tziporim. Let's see the word carbonate on this. It's the first white line carbonate. The Tana will respond to his friend saying there, Lo abi yochiach, lo yamarto meit shelo yamei olam, lo yamei olam niskach l'chalita, right? No, if you stays, I just read that carbonate wrong. I'm sorry. Tana, this response to his friend. The omate, a nega which retains its status, not this friend was saying that. The nega which retains its status, love yichich is not any proof. And it would not be a proof to Rabbi Elazar. The loyim amarta ka'omate, because in the case where it's retained its status, didn't grow. Shloim olam niskach, which never was suitable to come to chalita at all. Tar parkim mitoch echlet. Would you say the same as when he was pareach after being muchlat? Muchlat, when that. So we change gears here. He's talking about muchlat, but that's not. The position is nizkar chalita. I'm not sure about this carbon either. I think he might be complicating things beyond what's necessary. Let's go back to the Gemara and look at it again. The Chain Tani Mesi L'Chavrei is where the Tana received from his friend. His friend, Lo Yamarta B'zeh She'eno Nizkak L'Chalita. If you won't say he has to bring birds in the case of Omeid because he never came to the meet of Muchlat. As opposed to this person who, I think, the way without learning that carbonata, he would have come to the to be Nechlat if it hadn't then proceeded further. So this he would have come to Chalita, so that's why he has to bring birds. Well, Rabbi Yaakov counted this Sofa Masei Rabbi Elazar. The end of the brisa is the right Rabbi Elazar because it says Hator mitoch hezger pater miprima v'yiklas yikod siporim. No matter somebody who comes Torah out of hezger, no matter what, doesn't differentiate. And all the brisa evidently was Torah's corner with there is talking about prichos, and it sounds like once you come out of hezger, even through prichos, by it expanding, you're part of everything, including a korban. So I'm Rabbi Shmuel Bar Abdul Mapi and Levi Tziporim. So the whole machlokes is about the birds. If you have to bring birds, but there are other korbanos in Torah to bring a chatas and an asha and an ola. Those three korbanos have a heavy korban called amamoide she'eno maybe korban. Everybody agrees that he doesn't bring the other korbanos. That's the name. Okay, the Tani, and there was a brayz which indicates this. It's a mini chusa. It's a b'shvi galech v'shmini avi, because the korbanos are linked to shaving on the 7th day and bringing them on the 8th day. As shuton tiglachas, those who require to be shaved on the 7th day may be called bringing these korbanos which is associated with the 8th day. Shenaton tiglachas, those who do not require haircut, ain't maybe korban. They don't bring korban. Rabbi Chaim Bar Ukla Shem Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina said, so changes the next, to this passage, and it says to a different passage. Should be Vatzarua Asher Boha Nega V'Goimer Tomei Ikra. The Tzarua who has a nega, he calls Tomei. Asher Tumas Kluya Benigo. The person who's Tuma is linked to his nega. He is the one who it becomes has to call Tomei and Semichus Matanet. Then bring the Tziporim. Zeshe Tumaso Fluya B'Sviros Yomov. The one who has to call, because it says Kol Yemei and Kol Yemei Tzorato. So those who have to count days, count days of Tara, they require the Tziporim, and not ones who don't require days because it Not sure he's going in Pricha. No, he's going in general, but there's a new thing. Echam Baruch Hashem Rabbi Yossi said, "Ba'anaga because tamei tamei ikra." In other words, he's saying, "How do we know that she mitzvah muskar mitzvah muchla?" Because he says, "Eshet tumas and tli benigo." The right, the one the mitzvah who's tamei, who's only becomes ois tamei when he no longer has the nega. Asher Bon again with the Shater so pasuk. That's a Ru Asher Bon Naga, the Tamei Tamei, the one whose Tara is contingent on Bon Naga versus not Bon Naga. He has to say Tamei Tamei. He has all those halachas. But Zesh the must be B'Sfiras Yamav, as opposed to those person who's just becomes Torah after 7 days when the status didn't change. So then that person doesn't have all these halachas. Akidum Priya Prima. That, so I see, no, he does, whatever it says in Pasuk, Aslam Yatev, the Baruch W. Kareem, and Tomei Tomei Ikra, that doesn't apply to him, right? Tikal Tirasi Parami 9, how do we know also that the haircut and the birds don't apply? Rabbi Lezer Drumiam, Rabbi Lezer of the South said, B'Shem Rabbi Ami, said Rami, Zos Tiatermas Mitzora Biyom, Eshu Mitame Mitayr Biyom Echad. The person who is, because Torah 1 day. That's to say, Shem Matame V'Tarav Yom Echad. But this one who does not, says the Kurmeter, Kamuchat Shebiyom Shenirpa Nega, a Muchat on the day that the Nega is healed, the Chozet Tarasa goes back to the Tara. Avamuzgar Aflishachla Nega Miyad Lacher Esger, but even the Muchat, the Musgar wants to put a quarantine, so he doesn't get out of quarantine just because then goes away. He has to remain in quarantine until after 7, and so therefore the one who can become Torah, the process begins immediately. When he finds he's healed, he's the one who brings the Tilak Spurim, supposed to has to remain in quarantine for the balance of the 7 days. Up to Halacha Tes and Raf Yud, Amud Av. We will stop here for this evening.